him, threatening to cut him to pieces if he didn't tell her everything. Even though Jilly was Jin Rankandle's nanny, she logically didn't know Mirakan by sight, even though she might have heard the legends about him. At this time, Jin, fearing for Mirakan, who was already half-conscious, hurried to stop her. He told her to stop, but he said her name because he wanted to explain everything to her. But then Mirakan remembered something that had to do with Jilly's name. Suddenly he sat up, put one hand to his chest and the other he held out to Jilly. His eyes were full of love, and his face was flushed except for the bruise he'd received when he'd hit the windowsill. Mirakan told Jilly that they had finally met while calling her his strawberry shortcake. Hearing this, Jin felt very ashamed for Mirakan and lowered his head and covered his face with his hand. Mirakan told Jilly that he had been waiting for a long time to meet her, thus embarrassing her. Jin only realized that he and Murakami were in trouble. After that, Jin decided to start over and introduced Mirakan to the nanny, saying that he was the Rangandal guardian. The Black Dragon Mirakan. Why did he decide to introduce his nanny? But Mirakan interrupted him and said that he knows who she is. He said that she is still his strawberry cake. When she found out who Mirakan was, she said that she was only a lowly servant in the Rankandal household and apologized for her behavior. She bowed to him and asked him to forgive her. He told her not to worry and how he could be offended by calling her a strawberry. Jilly was confused, and she asked Mirakan why he called her that. "Because you are wonderful, beautiful, and bake the most delicious strawberry pies," Mirakan replied. She thought about it and suddenly realized why the master asked her to make strawberry pies every day. Jin asked the nanny to sit down so he could explain everything. After hearing Jin's entire story, she said that there were a lot of things she didn't know about Master. Jin apologized to Jilly for having to lie to her. Even though Jilly knew that the Master had an exceptional talent, she couldn't imagine that the Master had magic, and she didn't know that he had signed a contract with Solderit, and now he had a dragon with him. She said that as his nanny, she was both shocked and happy. Jin said she was one of them now, and no one else should know about Mirakan's awakening and Jin's connection to him, at least not yet. Jilly said she understood. Then Mirakan told her not to worry, calling her a pie girl because he would always be with Jin. Jilly thanked Mirakan for his kindness. Suddenly, she started talking about that noise. She asked if it was from Mirakan's reincarnation. Then Mirakan replied that it wasn't so, and Jin warned him to be careful. Mirakan said he just fell. Jilly then went up to Jin and asked him sheepishly if he was sure Mirakan could be trusted. To which Jin hesitantly replied that yes, you can. At this time, Mirakan was laughing as if nothing had happened at the fact that he himself had fallen. The heroes were standing outside the middle teleportation gate building. The captain of the Black King's squad was also standing next to them. They were talking to Gilly and she said they did a great job addressing the entire Black King squad, and that the Rankandal family would reward them handsomely for their work. The captain thanked her and said that they had learned a lot on this mission, and that he would look forward to seeing her young Rankandal grow up. Jin was also standing next to him. Mirakan in the form of a cat was sitting on his shoulder. Now he could be next to Jin even in the form of a cat. Suddenly, the captain turned to the nanny by first and last name and asked her if it was possible to ask a personal question. Jilly allowed it, and then the captain said that she had an amazing talent, so why did she leave her family and become a nanny for young Rankandal? Jilly didn't say much, but after a short pause, she turned her back and said over her shoulder that it didn't matter and there was nothing interesting about it. Then the captain realized that it was rude of him and apologized to her, so they said their goodbyes, and so the heroes came to the middle teleportation gate. There they were met by a man who asked them to introduce themselves. Then Jilly took out the bundle and opened it to show the man what looked like the end of a sword with the Rankandal family crest on it. She said they needed to go to Kelowna, to Hewfester, to join the Allied forces. When he saw this, he immediately knew that they were from the Rankandal family. He said it was an honor to meet them and asked them to follow him. He said they'd give Jen and Jilly the best seats. This person informed them that they would have to wait 2 hours, but then they would be home in no time and wished them a pleasant trip. Jin and Jilly were sitting on a luxurious sofa with Mirakan the cat. Jilly told Jin that she was actually worried, because even if Mirakan was discovered, they might be able to get out of it, but what if? And then Jin beat her to it by asking if she was talking about magic. She said that none of the Rangandals are capable of using it. Then Jin smiled and told her not to worry. He knew that himself, so he would hide his magic. Suddenly, there was a commotion from somewhere. All 3 of them sitting on the sofa turned around to see what it was. Jin saw this and became alert. Suddenly, a man wearing a green robe with a golden dragon on it walked into the room. It was a guy with purple eyes and long white hair. Behind him were 2 large guards. They were all from the Zippel family, which is a sworn enemy of the Rankandal family. The man sat down across from Jin in silence. Jin was silent, But looking at this man, he tried to remember who it was because this man from the Zippel family looked familiar. Suddenly, the guy arrogantly clicked his tongue and said that he didn't want something in the Hufester, showing contempt with all his appearance. Then he added, looking at the Rankindles, that he hadn't expected to see these dregs here. Although the nanny was full of anger, she was still silent, and Jin was as calm as possible and did not give in to provocations. Seeing Murakana cat, this man said that the cat is cute. Smiling naively, he called the cat over and called it a good boy. But Murakan mercilessly attacked this guy, scratching his hand. Suddenly, the two men who were next to the boy became alert. They were about to use force, but the boy stopped them and said that everything is fine, this cat is just an animal, and he himself provoked it and that it is better to keep your swords in the scabbard when Rangandella. Suddenly he thought about it and looked at Jin. This boy was trying to hurt them, but he didn't expect them to just ignore him. He noticed that the younger one, so he meant Jin, was very reserved. After that, he introduced himself. He said that his name was Veridin Zippel. He apologized for his rudeness, walked over to Jin and held out his hand. And then Jin exclaimed in his mind, he finally remembered who it was. Veridin Zippel is a genius magician, most likely the next head of the family. He is the equal of all young magicians, both in terms of skills and in terms of character. He's the one whose magical abilities Jin considered an unattainable ideal. But it was like this before. Jin didn't think that he would meet him at such a young age. Jin said that he was also curious about what Veridin was like. He's glad Veridin wasn't a complete. They started arguing and Jin said that if the guards had taken out their balls, Veridin would have gone to Hufester without guards and without a couple of fingers. Veridin laughed and said that even the Rankhandle jokes were cruel. Jin asked if it looked like he was joking, giving Veridin a cold look. Then Veridin thought about it and decided to give Jin some advice. He said that if Jin meets someone else from the Zippel family, then don't rush to cut off someone's fingers, because this will add to the problems of both families. To which Jin replied that it was quite funny, and that their fathers, Shiren Rankhandle and Celiac Zippel, wouldn't start a war over some childish quarrel. Veridin considered this. He agreed with Jin and said that they would probably compensate for the damage with gold or something. He added that Jin had taught him something and said that he would pay him back later. Jin told him to pay him back right now, to which Veridin asked with a smile what he should do. Jin asked them to keep quiet until the gate was activated and let him rest. Veridin looked at Jin with interest and thought that in a couple of years he would become someone amazing. But despite Veridin's interest in Jin, they couldn't make friends with her because of their background. But Veridin was also happy with the idea that they might become sworn enemies. Jin, looking at the behavior of Veridin, who had already annoyed him, thought that the Ziploves were not all right in the head. Suddenly, a voice came over the loudspeaker, thanking them for waiting and telling them that teleportation was about to begin. Before teleporting, Veridin called out Jin's name and said that it was nice to meet him and would look forward to the next meeting. Jin, on the other hand, showed no sympathy and said that he hoped that their meeting would never come. And so the main characters came to the castle by carriage. As soon as they got off the carriage, they were immediately met by the butler. He introduced himself as Pedro, the second manager of the house. It must have been hard to get here, Pedro said. He said that he would welcome them to the main castle of the Rangandles, and in the Garden of Swords. And so the main character found himself in the Garden of Swords, in the main castle of the Rankandle. The Garden of Swords is a place where those who have contributed to the prosperity of the Rangandle family can leave their sword. Thus, this garden is a symbol of the hopes and honor of every Rangandle. Walking along the Garden of Swords, the hero talks about how he once hoped that after his death his sword would be placed here, in the garden. He remembers that in the past he was weak, deprived of potential. He was never a leader or a blade. He didn't know why he'd ever thought that hard training would make a difference. But now, as far as Jin was concerned, his life in this worthless place would make sense. So Jin entered the castle. There he was met by his father and other members of the Rangandle family. He was first greeted by his mother, Rose Rankandle, lady of the Rankandle house, who goes by the nickname Black Panther. Jin also greeted his mother in return. Murekin and Shiren suddenly locked eyes. Shiren's gaze wasn't gracious at all, and his face was sullen. Jin's father asked him what kind of cat was on his shoulder and where he had picked it up. The boy replied that he had taken him in. Shiren emphasized the difference between picked up and sheltered and said it was good that Jin could choose his words, because that's how a real Rankandle should respond. At the same time, all of Jin's siblings in the room were looking at him with hatred because of his father's praise. Suddenly the cat jumped off Jin's shoulder and ran to his mother. His mother rose, while petting the cat, asked what his name was. Jin replied that his name was Moth Raknekdal. Hearing this, Jin's older brothers were outraged. One of them began to appeal to his father and mother, saying that this should not be allowed to get away with it. You cannot give an insignificant animal their last name. Then he turned to Jilly and asked her how she'd raised Jin in the first place. But then his father interrupted him. He asked Jin why his son had given the cat the name Rankandle. Jin replied that he did it in order to be responsible. He said that maybe it's just a cat, but it's the first time he's sheltered someone, and if so, then the name should be meaningful. Muraken in his cat form just looked at Jin happily. Jin's father Shiren found this very funny and asked him if he understood the significance of their last name since he was talking about it. Jin replied that he understood and said, while holding the cat in his arms, that if someone hurt the moth, he would pay for it. Shiren commented on Jin's words, noting that the boy has a talent for making enemies. Meanwhile, Jin's siblings were looking at him with angry eyes. Jin said that apparently he really has this talent, but he also has a talent for getting rid of enemies. We see Shiren smile broadly at this and say that his siblings should be more careful if they decide to deal with what he called Jin, the cheeky kid. Then Jin's parents, Shiren and Rose, went their separate ways. And here we are transported to the future. 4 years have passed since Jin came to the main castle of Rankandel. It's the summer of 1794. We see Jin standing with a wooden sword in his hands. He was training in fencing. At the moment, Jin Rankandel, is a 14-year-old knight of the second rank, also a cadet. We see him standing with his fencing coach. The coach said that it was time to finish training and that Jin had done a good job. Jin asked if that meant there would only be a morning workout. Coach Jin's name is Garen Altamir, and he is the guardian of House Rankandel, a knight who trains low-ranking cadets. He reminded Jin that young Lady Luna was planning to train him. Jin remembered this and decided that in that case, he should have a bite to eat, so he put the wooden sword back in its place and went to eat. Before he left, Garen asked him if he would have lunch with the cadets again, and he said that Madame Rose would be upset. Jin sighed heavily and said that it couldn't be helped because he didn't want to play peekaboo with his siblings over the food. Garen expressed his understanding and said that he would inform the lady. Jin was sitting on the stairs when suddenly a guy came up to him. He called Jin master and said that he had brought food. This guy is Belop Schmitz, guardian of the House of Rangandel, a low-ranking knight cadet. Jin thanked him for the meal. Belop sat down next to her and they both started eating. Belop was an ordinary commoner, 13 years old. Because of his lack of training, he was stripped of his rank and banished, and it was clear from Jin's look that he felt sorry for Belop. Jin then asked him if it was good for him, and Belop just smiled awkwardly. After that, we see what kind of speech Belop made. He said it was really delicious. He is very grateful to the Rankandel family for being able to eat such wonderful meat. He is especially grateful to the young master because Jin is always ready to share meat with him. Jin was embarrassed and asked Belop to stop. Jin said that Belop said the same thing yesterday and then asked if he knew it by heart. Belop scratched his head and laughed awkwardly. Then Jin told him that he should be more careful because of what Belop says, what's on his mind, everyone looks down on him. Belop really looked simple and seemed very naive. Jin continued to give him advice and told Belop to straighten his shoulders, hold his head higher and become at least a little more confident. He reminded Belop that he was a Rankandel Knight cadet. Then Belop confusedly said that his grades were terrible and he hadn't even reached the first rank. Jin sighed heavily and reassured him that even becoming a cadet wasn't easy. No matter how bad Belop's grades are, he's still better than his peers who didn't make it here, Jin said. Jin watched Belop eat and thought that he was so pure and sincere. I wouldn't be surprised if even his relatives, Jin thought, but at the same time, he couldn't understand something. How someone so pure, trained by Sword Master Hiron, became a loyal of the Bement Empire. How he turned into a ruthless killer. When Jin found out that Belop had become an imperial bodyguard, Jin was shocked, and when Jin found out that he had committed suicide, the master was upset. So Jin couldn't afford to leave Belop, because then who knows what would happen to him. Jin then shared a piece of meat with Belop. Belop was happy even for such a seemingly trivial matter. Jin was personally going to make sure that Belop wasn't kicked out this time. He said that he was already dead, and he wouldn't repeat his mistakes again. We see a picture of Jin walking down the hall and talking about what he has achieved. He has 2nd rank Shadow Energy Release, 4th rank Mana, and 2nd rank Swordsmanship. Everything is not going badly. At this rate, Jin plans to reach the 3rd rank in Swordsmanship, and we see that Jin has come to the training room. The moon was already waiting for him there. She said that today they will continue yesterday's training. However, this time it will be a little different, Luna said. She said the phrase that the heart is your eyes. She told him to look with your heart. Jin obeyed and did what Luna said. He was embarrassed because he had never heard of such training, but he had no choice. Luna explained that for those who live in fencing, it is extremely important to open their inner vision. She told him not to open his eyes. Standing with his eyes closed, Jin thought that only knights who have reached the 7th rank can comprehend inner vision, and Luna wants to train someone who can get the 2nd rank. In addition, inner vision is usually achieved by dispelling the aura, but during training with the moon, Jin can't use the aura. He decided to trust her, so he continued to do what she told him and focus on his training. He firmly believed that one day he would understand how to do it, and now we see that the training session has already come to an end. Luna praised Jin, saying that he was doing great as always and that he could come back again. Jin was grateful for what she was doing. After training, Luna thought that as she expected, he was doing well, but each time, he exceeds her expectations. Jin shows a concentration that is not typical of a second-rank knight. Luna is sure that with such a potential, he will understand everything in a couple of years. Jin was leaving, and we can see that Luna glanced at him and wished only for him to keep growing. And we are transported to the open courtyard in the castle, where all the cadets were already standing and they were lined up in a row. Jin went there and was greeted by Coach Garen. Jin glanced at the cadets and said they were nervous. Garen replied that today was a crucial sparring session. If the cadets get a good grade, they will become a Night Guardian faster. It's hard not to be nervous, Garen said. Then, turning to Jin, he said that today was also an important day for the master. According to Garen, Rose said that if Jin defeated 10 higher-ranked opponents, he would be able to start training in the advanced group starting next year. Then Jin saw Bellop among the cadets, who was shaking with fear. Jin thinks about doing something to keep Bellop from getting kicked out, but Bellop still lacks confidence. It was time for Coach Garen to announce to the cadets that today they would take turns fighting 3 opponents, and the top 10 will face Jin one-on-one. The cadets understood the command, and now we see that they are already fighting. Coach Garen watched the fights of the cadets and commented on one of the fights, saying that it was very good and the training did not pay off in vain. There were 3 cadets left on the bench who were not selected, and Garen told them that they could sit back down. And we see the following picture. Garen tells Jin to get ready, and Jin himself is in full combat readiness. And so he quickly delivers a crushing blow to his opponent, which knocks her sword out of her hands. Jin won in just 1 blow. Standing over the defeated opponent, he remembers that earlier, in a previous life, he defeated 8 opponents. Right now, he only needs 2 more wins. But as it is clear from his words, he was wary of one of the rivals. At the same time, Garen called out to the next opponent. And then the girl he'd been wary of came out. This girl's name is Meza Milkano. She is a Knight Cadet of House Rangandel from the normal group. She was one of the few people who would become a Night Guardian after completing her training. When she came out to fight, she told Jin that she would beat him today, no matter what the cost. Jin replied that he was looking forward to it. But in his mind, the battle with her was the most important moment in the trial. After exchanging a few words, they began to fight. Meza immediately took off and threw a punch at Jin, but he managed to block it. Jin thought back to his previous life. He noticed that Mesa was even stronger than before, but it wasn't enough to defeat the current Jin. Still, Jin knew that he would have to fight 8 more after her, so he started attacking Mesa with simple punches. She noticed that he had previously demonstrated a wide variety of techniques. She was sure there was a reason, but she couldn't figure it out. Or, as she thought, he was underestimating her because he didn't think she could win. At that moment, Jin attacked Mesa. She still chose to think that he underestimated her. Firmly gripping her sword, she fiercely attacked Jin in return. She wanted to show him that she shouldn't be underestimated. The cadets standing to the side could only watch this battle in surprise. Jin, meanwhile, kept up the pressure, and we see Meza not wanting to let Jin push her aside and wanting to surpass him. She pounces on him, swinging her sword wide, and then her strike reached Jin's sword. The moment their swords came together, Mace's sword couldn't withstand Jin's precise strike in the middle, so the other half of Mace's sword flew out of the way. Meza was confused, and she didn't understand what had happened or how her sword had broken. As a sign of his victory, Jin held a wooden sword to her throat. He told her it was a good fight. Then Jin looked at the sword and said that it was useless now. Suddenly, Mesa realized that the Jin had been hitting the same spot all along. She was thinking that even though their strength and stamina were the same, she would never be able to beat him in accuracy and perseverance, since Jin was Rankandel's son after all. After thinking about everything, she turned to Jin and said that she would devote herself to training completely and would definitely win. Everything was going according to plan. It was hard for Jin to fight the others in this state, but because of Mesa's crushing defeat, the other cadets were sure beforehand that they couldn't beat Jin. And now we see that the challenge is over. Jin won all 10 opponents. Jin was glad that everything went as he expected. It's easy to see that Jin was pretty exhausted after 10 fights in a row. Coach Garen told Jin that it was amazing and added the following. Starting next year, Jin will be trained by real Rankandelas, and then Garen congratulated him. Jin thanked Garen and said that as long as he wasn't transferred to the advanced group, he was counting on him. It was almost time for the morning training session to end, and Garen wanted to take stock of it and go to lunch. But Jin wanted to take on another cadet in the 10 minutes that remained. He picked up his sword, and when Garen asked him who Jin wanted to fight, Jin loudly called out the name Bellop Schmitz. Bellop was confused and afraid. What can I say? Even if the cadets standing nearby were scared. Jin told Bellop to fight. Bellop was very scared. He tried to object, but then Jin shouted his name again. He pointed his sword at Bellop and said that he couldn't survive in the Rankandel family there. He ordered Bellop to come forward and fight, and threatened to destroy him. And then we see a picture of Bellop walking unsteadily towards Jin. Bellop was standing in front of Jin, holding a sword, and he didn't understand why the master had chosen him, if only because Bellop was weak and Jin wanted to teach him military discipline. Jin looked at Bellop seriously and told him that he was quite tired from all the fighting, while Bellop was full of energy, but he was still stronger, so Jin called Bellop. Bellop couldn't understand the master. Right after saying that to Bellop, Jin charged in. He hit Bellop. Bellop asked why Jin was doing this. Jin continued to attack. Bellop's shouts rang out. When Bellop blocked another shot from Jin, Jin came up and said that he was blocking well. After that punch, Jin jumped back. Then he threw dust in Bellop's eyes. I started attacking while he couldn't see anything. Jin swung down and knocked Bellop off his feet. Bellop's eyes filled with tears, and he was in pain. Jin told him that he didn't just call him out for a fight, but because he wanted to fight him. Standing over Bellop, Jin said that he could have killed him. He ordered him to get up and that he would not spare him again. Meanwhile, the cadets continued to watch in horror. Suddenly, Bellop began to rise, and a golden aura began to radiate from him. The cadets noticed this, and it turned out that Bellop was watching with an aura. Bellop was crying, but there was also anger on his face, and a yellow gold aura enveloped him. Meza said they needed to stop right away, because if this continued, Jin might get hurt. The trainer was in shock. He was watching the fight closely, so he didn't hear what Meza was shouting. Jin ordered Coach Garen that whatever he saw now, he would take with him to the grave. Garen said he understood, and Meza was shocked. Bellop then asked if this was what Jin wanted. He replied that this was exactly the case. Jin told Bellop not to hold back if he knew how to use aura. Bellop bared his teeth and said that Jin had made a terrible mistake if he wanted to fight him and that he should have acted sooner. With that, Bellop attacked Jin, and now we see that their swords collided. Jin blocked Bellop's attack, but his sword didn't hold. Bellop broke Jin's sword in two with a single blow. Jinwoo, meanwhile, was thinking that he knew that Bellop was strong, but he didn't think that he was that strong. During training sessions, Bellop always managed to understand the opponent's strategy and assess their skills, and then deliberately lost. But Jin would never have thought that Bellop already had an aura. Jin was extremely surprised. Jin's sword was broken, leaving him unarmed. Then he decided to fight with a different weapon, namely with his hands. He hit Bellop's arm while he was swinging his sword. With that blow, Jin knocked the sword out of Bellop's hands. Suddenly, Jin approached him and grabbed him. Bellop was also left without a sword, and Jin knocked him down and took a chokehold. Jin held Bellop and waited for him to give up. But he didn't give up, so Jin let him go. Bellop lay exhausted on the floor as Jin approached. Bellop, holding his throat and standing on all fours, asked Jin why he stopped, because he himself wanted a decent fight and said that then it was necessary to fight to the end. He asked Jin if he really enjoyed playing with people that much. Jin replied that it wasn't. Bellop countered by asking why Jin had arranged all this. Jin replied that he didn't want to provoke Bellop and that he had no idea how much. All of a sudden, we see Jin get down on one knee in front of Bellop. Bellop asked him what Jin knew about him that made him so stubborn. Jin, reaching for the sword, said that he didn't know anything about it, but he knew this: to be kind and caring, you need to be strong. Bellop is weaker than Jin, but kinder at the same time. Putting his hand on Bellop's shoulder, he said that he liked that trait about Bellop. But the good cannot survive in this hell. Jin then asked Bellop to become stronger so that he could protect the good with him and the others. Jin apologized to him for being rude. Then Bellop burst into tears. At this time, the servants of the palace came with food. They asked if the training was going on and if they should come back later. Jin replied that everything was fine and told them to bring in the food. Bellop was still sitting on the floor, wiping away his tears, and he had told the master to go to lunch. Jin smiled and said that he would take a portion for Bellop as well. And we are transported to another location. We see that Shiren is sitting on the floor and Han is standing next to him. After Shiren listened to Han, he asked him if the younger one really said that. Khan confirmed it. Then Shiren laughed out loud and said the following sentence: so that's what his beliefs are. Jin wants to rule the strong and help the weak. Shiren said that in this case, it is necessary to understand whether such an approach is beneficial to the Rankhandle family. He ordered Han to go back and hand Jin over, and he said it was time for Junior to go on his first assignment, and were transported back to the academy. It's January 1795. Jin is 15 years old and has been promoted to a 3rd rank knight. The first vacation started. The cadets either left for their hometowns and villages, or they stayed to continue their individual training sessions. When cadets advance to the advanced group, they can forget about wooden swords and they will be given a custom-made sword. Some of the cadets had already given the blacksmiths instructions regarding their swords. Jin was thinking that he also wanted to find a suitable sword in their armory, but Luna would choose his sword because she wanted it. It turns out that a month ago, Luna tried to persuade Jin to let her choose his own sword. But Jin didn't mind, because Luna is a better swordsman, so you just have to trust her. And so Luna showed the sword she had chosen. Jin clearly didn't like this sword. He was embarrassed. Luna said that this sword is also called Veil Slayer. At Jin's age, she'd used it a lot herself. Back then, she wanted to use something like a sword axe with a similar shape. She looked at the sword and said that the shape of the crantle she used to fight with came from him. She asked Jin if he liked the sword. Jin didn't know what to say. After collecting his thoughts, he said that he was grateful for her help in choosing a sword, but it was unlikely that such a sword would be suitable for him. Then she was disappointed and said that she was just joking. But Jin knew it didn't sound like a joke. Luna then tried to talk Jin out of it, telling him that Veil Slayer was a really good sword, even if it was a little heavy. Jin was embarrassed to watch and watched in silence. Then Luna saw his expression and understood. She said that she understood him, and so be it with another sword. Jin let out a sigh of relief. Luna opened the doors of the armory and said that she really tried her best when choosing it. She was thinking about which sword would suit Jin best, which sword would suit only him. And then she took the sword in her hands and said that she had thought of him. Since Jin had chosen Barasada at the selection ceremony, this sword would suit him best. Jin was pleasantly surprised. He recognized this sword. This sword is called the brother of the Barasada, which belonged to the founder. This sword is called Bradamante. Jin was thrilled, and Luna said he seemed to like the sword. This sword is unique. Even the other swords from the family collection can't compare to it, Jin said. He reasoned that he would have done anything to get that sword, and was delighted that Luna had chosen Bradamante for him. Bradamante and Barasada are best compatible with shadow energy. If Jin had chosen it himself, then his siblings would have objected. Then Jin said that the others wanted Bradamante too, and he didn't even know how to thank her. Upon hearing this, Luna told him that something didn't add up and she thought he was still uncomfortable with her. This started to upset Luna. Jin quickly retorted and told her that it wasn't true at all and that he wasn't lying to her. She said that she was already upset, so he would have to comfort her. After that, they started training. Luna asked him to remember something else. She said that among all the brothers and sisters who try to trample on each other, there are also those who selflessly love him, and once again asked him to remember this well. Then she took him by the shoulders and told him not to upset her again. Luna said that she had already spent enough time alone, long before Jin was born, and that she didn't want him to be alone like she once was. So Luna went back to training, and she told Jin to watch with his heart. When he returned from training, he immediately showed the sword to Muraken. Muraken, without distracting himself from the comics, told him to put the sword away. It's too early for him because he didn't master the shadow energy enough. He explained that to properly use Bradamante, shadow energy must be at least rank 3, and Jin is still a brat with the 2nd rank. Besides, Muraken said that Jin wouldn't even be able to awaken the sword. But Jin didn't listen and believed that he would soon reach the 3rd rank and be able to use Bradamante. And suddenly Muraken was distracted from reading the comics. He made a remark to Jin and told him to listen carefully. Muraken took Jin by the head and told him that Barasada and Bradamante couldn't be used randomly. They needed 3rd rank shadow energy, and that was the bare minimum. He ordered Jin to use a normal sword until his strength reached the 5th rank. Jin retorted that he didn't like waiting too long and that he only needed to reach rank 5 in a year. Muraken frowned, then said that it was impossible even if Jin won the shadow contest. Muraken ridiculed Jin's plans, said that it was nonsense and asked him not to talk such nonsense anymore. Jin was annoyed, so he picked up the comic book like he was going to tear it up and asked Muraken what he was saying. Suddenly I came into the room and saw this picture and asked if everything was all right. She then informed him that Coach Garen was calling for him. Jin was asked to come himself because Garen had to explain the strategy to him and show him everything on the map. Jin asked what strategy he was talking about. Jilly said that Coach Garen would be helping him with his first assignment and that Jin would move out as soon as he was rested. Jin mused aloud that it was a good time for the mission since he had recently been awarded the 3rd rank, but it was strange that they were moving out after a rest. He came to the conclusion that perhaps this is due to the complexity of the task, because they are usually assigned from an advanced group or higher. Jin said that he probably already proved himself worthy. He went to the coach and asked Gilly to wait here with Muraken. Jin opened the door and went into the office. He told Garen that he had come for a mission. Garen asked Jin to pass and said that only 10 cadets from the normal group, including Jin, got it. And then Garen began to explain the strategy to them. The cadets will be divided into 2 groups. This is a search task. They will go to the southern border of the Jin Kingdom. It was quite a dangerous place because this kingdom is not far from the land of monsters as well as from the base of the Flame White Wolf. They shouldn't send low-ranking cadets to this place, Jin thought. He noticed something was wrong because this is quite difficult for the first task and it was issued earlier than it should be. The cadets were given a map and instructions for the squad members and then everyone was shocked. The squad included cadets with average scores and even Bellip, whose grades were constantly fluctuating. It looked like someone had deliberately set it up. Jin knew that someone was his father. He realized that his father might have been informed of their battle with Bellip and that Shiren had decided to test Jin in this way. Jin was very serious. He accepted these conditions and was determined to show his father what he could do because his beliefs are unshakable. We're being moved forward 3 days, and the cadets are already at the southern border of the Jin Kingdom. In order to complete the mission, they must find Sember Will, the heir of the Will family from the Jin Kingdom. According to their plan, they will set up camp in the central section of the border, and after that, each squad will go on a search. They also decided that every day at the designated time, a selected person from each squad would come to the camp to share information with the others. Jin ordered everyone to call themselves the commander and said that the injured should stay in the camp until they fully recovered. When everyone stopped, one of the party members said that they had noticed a monster from the Water Tail tribe. These monsters from the Water Tail tribe are cute creatures that avoid predators, which means they won't run into the White Wolf tribe right now. Jin had ordered what appeared to be Belop to go to camp 2 hours earlier and then return to Sector 13 since he couldn't go fast because of the snowfall. He ordered the rest of the team to start searching Sector 13. Jin had a bad feeling that his father had personally assigned them to this mission, but everything was going too smoothly. Jin allowed for the possibility that he had misunderstood everything and this was just an assignment, not a test from Shire. And we see that a bunch of cute little creatures have come up to the cadets. One of the Tail tribe monsters said that they felt sorry for the guys and gave Jin a fried fish. Jin accepted the gift and thanked him, promising to repay his kindness later. The hero carefully considered his plan of action. After Sector 13, the land of the Beastmen begins, and the cadets from the normal group are no match for them. Therefore, they should not strain too much for the sake of results. For the next 3 days, Jin will only confirm the results of the search in each of the sectors. And suddenly we see someone running towards Jin. It turned out to be Belop. He informed Jin that the second squad was ambushed. The cadets were frightened. Jin ordered the cadets to prepare to move out and Delop to report the situation. Delop reported that the second squad had spread out to get away from the enemy, and only one had been able to reach the camp and report what had happened. Jin started questioning Belop, and we find out that the ambush was set up by ordinary people. There were 3 of them. Belop said why would anyone attack the Rangandals with such a small force. Jin agreed and said that he was sure there were many more of them. He then ordered Eddington and David to return to the camp to guard it and the surrounding area. He told them that it was forbidden to make contact with the enemy when detected. He ordered them to report to him first if anything happened. Jin thought about how many people might have set up the ambush, but he couldn't even guess what their goal was or why they were attacking the second squad instead of the first, which included Jin himself. He doesn't know who they are, but he was determined to personally make them pay for daring to touch the Runandals. Suddenly, Jin motioned for the group to stop. They saw footprints and blood on the snow. Belop was horrified when he saw this, and he didn't want to think about the possibility that Mesa and the entire second squad might be dead. Jin reassured him that the blood was still fresh. After examining the place, he said that there were no signs of falling or pieces of flesh. He added that they fought here, but the second group escaped. Judging by the tracks, they were only attacked by one person. Suddenly, Sierra, one of the group members, found a bandage made in Hewfester where the cadets came from. She said she found them on the west side. In his mind, Jin imagined a map that showed a rough outline of the squad's movement. While the second squad was dressing the wounded man, someone else attacked and they had to flee to the west. Jin then ordered Sierra to go to Eddington and David's camp and explain everything to them, and ordered Belop to follow him. And so they ran. Suddenly they stopped and hid behind the birches. They saw the second squad, but Mesa wasn't with them, and the cadets themselves were guarded by all 3 of them. Jin ordered Belop to close his eyes briefly and attack the one on the left in 2 seconds. Jin took out a knife and started using shadow energy on it. It turns out that Muraken taught the hero to use the energy of shadows in such a way as to increase the sharpness and destructive power of the object, so the knife was more difficult to notice. Jin then threw a knife at one of the attackers. One of the squad members killed one of the guards. The second one was attacked by Belop, but the guard noticed him and blocked his attack. Suddenly, Jin arrived from the other side and threw a punch at him. The guard fell, screaming in pain. Jin stood over him and asked if everyone was safe. The battered members of the second squad said that they were fine, but Mesa was a prisoner. They said that they were not forgiven for this. Jin told them to take care of themselves first. Jin was standing over one of the guards, the guard begging for mercy. But Jin said that for a Zippel follower, he valued his life too much. Jin decided to give him a choice. If the guard tells you who they are, what their purpose is, and where the base is, then only he will die. Or else, if he kept his mouth shut, Jin would kill not only the guard, but also his loved ones. He said that he would keep his promise, because he is Jin Rankendall, and then he swore on the honor of his family. The guard chose the first option. He said that they are a group of Revolutionaries Canzello, and we see that the genie is transferred to the Memories, a terrorist organization that was active just before his death. The world was filled with panic when they killed a bunch of people in King Jin. They call themselves revolutionaries, and revolution is for them to overthrow kings and put their own at the head of the whole world. And here we are transported back and see the dialogue between Jin and the guard. The hero asked the guard if they wanted to cause trouble in the Jin Kingdom by killing the Rankendel cadets. The guard replied that he didn't know anything because he was just a 6, and that he didn't even know where the base was, but his group was located right near the Beastman lands. There are about 24th rank warriors and more mages. Jin then asked one last question. He asked why they had taken Mesa. The guard replied that it was just for the sake of propaganda to promote the revolution. They were ordered to take all the girls alive. Then one of the members of the group, being enraged, said that they were just scum. And we see Jin taking the sword and saying that he will keep his promise. Then we see that the blood has been left on the snow. After killing the guard, Jin asked the squad members how long it had been since Mesa disappeared, and they said that it had been about an hour. This meant that they were already close to their campsite. Jin ordered the group to give everyone first aid and request backup. One of the cadets asked Jin if he was going to go alone. Jin had a reasonable assessment of his own strength, and he knew that there were 24th rank men out there, and the cadet was right, it was too dangerous to go alone. Scott said that they were only cadets, and cadets often died during missions, so he asked Jin not to take any chances. But the hero was determined. He said that once one of them was captured, Rankendel couldn't leave him. Jin said that he was stronger than the cadets thought and that any objections would be considered insubordination, and then turned to Bellup. And he said that all the members of the second squad were injured, so he is the strongest among them. Jin hurried over to Mesa, wanting to be in time before they did something terrible to her. As Jin ran, he assessed the situation. His swordsmanship and energy are ranked 3rd, and his magic is ranked 4th. He is growing quite fast, but now he can't cope with all of them at once. The main thing for him is to save Mesa, so he decided that he would try to avoid fighting. He focused on the search and cast an exploration spell, and then the wind tracking spell. A green line pointed him toward the meadow, and he ran. While Jin was running, he was attacked. Several revolutionaries and a magus charged out of the bushes. He used magic to kill one of them. An enraged revolutionary with a sword attacked Jin, but Jin deftly drew his Bradamante sword and repelled the attack. And we see that the magician began to cast fire magic and warned the warriors to move back. Suddenly, with the help of fire magic, he grabbed Jin's hand with something that looked like a fire whip. Seeing this, one of the warriors decided that this was the most convenient moment to attack, since Gino was being held by a mage, but Jin beat him to it and hit him right in the stomach with his sword. The mage was holding Jin with a flaming whip, but suddenly Jin pulled on it and dispelled the magic. The mage was confused and didn't understand why his fire magic didn't work on Jin. The mage then started using ice magic, but that didn't bother Jin either. The mage couldn't believe his eyes. He stood there in horror, trying to figure out what was wrong with his magic as Jin approached him. Jin threw a punch and there was blood splattering everywhere. Jin called them the Kinzello. He suggested that perhaps they are not trying to hide because they expect that the opponents do not have combat experience. He saw the tracks and realized that the others had left in a cart. Kinzello has its own hierarchy, and Jin guessed that they probably split their loot according to their position in the group. This means that they will not dare to touch the share of the one who is more important, which means that there is still a chance to save Mesa. Jin took a look at the map. He said that he was already close to the Beastman lands and Kinzello base was somewhere nearby. And then he decided to distract them. He used fire magic. Then he set fire to the forest and started a big fire. It was part of his plan. The Kinzellos noticed that they were on fire. Everyone ran outside and went to put out the fire. Jin surreptitiously observed this. One of the revolutionaries began to command. He ordered the magicians to use water or ice magic. Jin thought that he was the boss, but it turned out that they called him boss. The boss shouted that the fire couldn't have started in this weather and said that it was definitely set by someone. Just as he started giving the order to find the instigator, Jin was already standing behind him. Suddenly, the boss turned around after hearing something, but Jin silently knocked him down. There was so much thick smoke from the fire that Jin and the revolutionary boss couldn't be seen on the roof. After knocking out the boss of the revolutionaries, he found the keys. Then we see him open the door to a certain room. There, he started looking for Mesa. He saw that there was a basement. After that, we are shown pink hair. And then we see that Jin has found a connected Mesa. She said why he did it. It's dangerous here. Jin told her not to worry about him and asked if she could go. She said she could, but she didn't think she could run, so Jin released her. Suddenly, they heard strange noises. Suddenly, Mesa asked Jin to promise her something. She asked him to leave her if he was in danger. She couldn't let Jin get hurt. Then he just held her back and said that we need to leave and that it's dangerous here. When they went outside, they saw that all the revolutionaries were killed and everything around them was destroyed. When he saw the claw marks on the revolutionaries, he realized that it was the beastmen from the warrior tribe who had tried. We can see that Jin and Mesa are looking somewhere else, and it's clear from the look in Mesa's eyes that she's obviously not happy. Then we are shown a shadow whose silhouette looks like a wolf. After that, we see a hand that is covered with fur and holds a weapon. And here we see a beastman from the white wolf tribe. This beastman was huge, and he was holding something that looked like a hammer axe in his hands. Meza said she would distract him and asked him to run, but Jin knocked her out with a blow to the neck and she fell unconscious. At that moment, the beastman clicked his tongue and said that they were all useless and were of no use because they couldn't even put out a fire. Then he turned to Jin and asked if it was all his fault. Jin replied that this was true and introduced himself, saying that he was the son of Shiren Runcandle, Jin Runcandle. And the next picture opens up. The beastman was much larger than Jin, and he was also very angry. Jin was fearless. He ordered the beastman to give his name. Hearing that Jin was a Rankandle, the wolf simultaneously bared its teeth, apparently having a grudge against the Rankandles. All of a sudden, we are transported to the events a few days before the start of the search mission to the Rankandle house. We see that he is holding his Bradamante sword and the energy of shadows begins to radiate from it. Suddenly, Muraken appeared out of nowhere and interrupted Jin by kicking him. Muraken was angry. He told Jin that Jin might die. Muraken warned him. He also said that Jin wasn't ready yet, and if Jin tried to awaken the sword again, the shadow energy would poison him. He warned Jin that if he didn't want to die from too much shadow energy, he shouldn't even think about awakening the sword. And so we are transported back to the present. We see that the beastman is shouting at Jin, calling him Runcandle. He said he was going to have a better hunt today. The wolf introduced himself and said that his name was Kuajito Truka. He was a warrior of the Truka family. He was from the White Wolf tribe. This tribe is made for battle and slaughter. An adult white wolf is at least a rank 6 warrior. Everyone knows that the White Wolf tribe doesn't like Rankandles. And all because a long time ago, the founder of the Rankandle family called their god, the great white wolf Javier, to him and killed him. Jin knew that he couldn't escape with Mesa. Kuajito screamed that he would sacrifice Gina to Javier so that his soul could rest in peace. Kuajito gave Jin a choice and said, either they fight in a fair duel, or the wolf will tear him to pieces while Jin runs away with his tail between his legs. Jin took a stance and said that he was choosing a fair fight. Kuajito started the attack. While he attacked, he said that the choice of Jin means that the Rankandellas are not devoid of nobility and that then let the strongest win. He hit Jin with his axe, but Jin managed to jump out of the way. But the wolf didn't stop and immediately launched a second attack. Jin blocked this attack, but he no longer had the strength to block its attacks. They exchanged blows again. However, Jin estimated that he could still win. He has an ace up his sleeve that Kuajito doesn't even know about. A pendant given by the moon and the energy of shadows. But Jin wasn't sure if it was worth wasting the pendant on such a threat. If Jin couldn't handle such an opponent, then he didn't have a chance to become stronger, he thought. However, in addition to all this, Jin couldn't use magic, since his 4th rank magic wouldn't even leave a scratch on a wolf. In addition, if the Guardian Knight is sent to investigate Canzello, he will immediately see traces of mana, and then Jin will definitely be discovered and expelled from the family. And so, after thinking about it, Jin came to the conclusion that there was no other choice and he would have to use the energy of the shadows. The wolf continued to press, while Jin continued to block and dodge the attacks. Pushing Jin back, the wolf said that he had a good sword, but for some reason it wasn't black like the famous Rangandle swords. After that, the wolf rushed at Jin, swinging his axe and said that Jin was stronger than he looked, but Jin managed to dodge. He tried to remember what it felt like when he tried to awaken the sword. The wolf, meanwhile, continued to morally push Jin. He said that he was finished and he would sacrifice both Jin and his white sword to Javier. When Jin was already at the peak of his emotions, he remembered. What we can see is that shadows have formed around Kuajito and Jin. The wolf could not understand what was happening. Everything was dark in his eyes. He said that he could not see anything. Suddenly, Gina threw a punch at Kuajito's stomach area. Jin's sword blade was shrouded in shadow energy, and the wolf now understood why the Rankandle were famous for their black swords. The wounded wolf was killed without understanding how Jin managed it. Jin just said it was a good fight. After defeating the wolf, Jin came to his senses because he was very tired. Suddenly, his eyes filled with shadow. Jin was screaming in pain. It looked like what Muraken had said had happened. Suddenly, Jin collapsed on the ground. He was in a place where everyone was calling him names, calling him a jerk and a disgrace to his family. This place was filled with shadow energy. Suddenly, someone appeared in front of him. It was Muraken's silhouette, and he reminded Jin of what he had said about what would happen if Jin decided to awaken the sword while he didn't have enough energy. He said that he would have to pay the price. Muraken asked Jin how much longer he would lie in the mud poisoned by shadow energy, and then told him to get up, because if Jin lost, it would all be over. Muraken asked Jin if he still didn't know what to do. Suddenly, Jin remembered to release the energy of the shadows. The shadow energy surrounding Jin was destroying everything and he couldn't use the release, but he wasn't going to give up. He relaxed, and then after a couple of tries, he finally succeeded. He let out a sigh of relief. He noticed that the pain was suddenly gone, which bothered him and seemed too strange. His body didn't change at all, but he was filled with the energy of the shadows. But he could still move, so he decided it was time to pick up Mesa and leave. When he suddenly heard a noise behind the rocks, he asked who was there. A guy poked his head out, terrified, and begged me not to kill him. Jin thought the man was from Kinzello. The man said that he was Semberville from the Jin Kingdom. Jin introduced himself to Sember and said that he was sent to find Sember. Sember was very happy to have met Rankendelv, and he was crying with happiness. Jin even managed to forget about him because of Kinzello. So Jin met Sember and they met. Then we see Jin take Mesa away. She said she would never forget his kindness. Jin replied that it was nothing and that he was paid for it after all. After taking Mesa, Jin asked Sember how it was that he was kidnapped by Kinzello. Sember said that he was following his beloved. Jin asked if they really decided to run away together. Sember got nervous and said it was because she had died 2 years ago. But her face, her voice, even the 2 moles on her arm are exactly the same as when she was alive. Jin immediately thought that since it was an exact replica, it must have been Buber Gaston's handiwork. He supposed they probably wanted to kidnap Sember for the money, but he couldn't figure out if there was any connection between Buber and Kinzello. The last time Jin encountered Buber was when he was 10, and here he was again. Jin suspected something was wrong. He was thinking about meeting Buber, finding out what kind of person he was. Fortunately for Jin, Buber's atelier is located in the Kurano Principality, and when Jin moves to the advanced group, he will definitely stop by. Jin said that reinforcements will be arriving soon, so it's time to head back. When Sember heard this, he burst into tears because Gina had summoned the Guardian Knights for his sake, but it was actually for Mesa's sake. Sember said that he would never forget their meeting and that if Jin ever needed his help, he would just let him know, but Jin only responded coldly. We see that the heroes have returned. Where Gina was met by the nanny, she was very happy and congratulated him on the successful completion of the task. She said that Jin was probably tired, so she prepared a bath for him. Jin was happy and was thanking Jilly when suddenly the cat in the back called Jin over. Jin pretended as if nothing had happened, walked up to Muraken and decided to pet him, asking if he was behaving well. But the Muraken cat bit him. Jin threw the cat away. Jin and Muraken were angry. Gina asked why Muraken bites, and in response received a question whether he is in his right mind. Muraken lashed out at Jin, during which he reminded him that he had told him many times not to awaken his sword. He had said this many times. Muraken said that Jin might ruin everything, and that he was worried about him. While Jin asked me to just listen. All of a sudden, Muraken transformed into a human and was already attacking Jin in this form. He said there were no excuses for Jin and asked what could be more important than the life of Solder, its sole follower. Jilly tried to separate them, but she said that the master had just returned. Then suddenly he said that she didn't bring strawberry shortcake and it looks like they have a problem. Jin tried to justify himself by saying that his friend was kidnapped right out from under his nose and who knows what would happen if he left Mesa. But Muraken said that Jin has a pendant and this is not some costume jewelry, by the way. Jin said that he didn't want to waste it, explaining that he might encounter much more powerful enemies. Muraken was even angrier that it would be considered a waste for Jin to use the pendant. Jin didn't understand why Muraken was so surprised, as Muraken continued to speak negatively about Jin. But then Jin asked how Muraken knew that he had tried to awaken the sword. To which Muraken replied that Jin's shadow energy rank had skyrocketed from 3rd to 4th, so it wasn't hard to guess. Jin said that he felt the energy of the shadows overwhelm him, but he never imagined that he would jump an entire rank. But Muraken said that Jin should thank Solderit for his mercy. A total of 10 people had experienced shadow energy poisoning. Now counting Jin as 11, and 9 of them had died. Jin is one of the survivors. He asked who the other one was, assuming it was the founder. But Muraken said he was second, and Temer would have died. Jin waved his hand and said that it meant that he and Muraken were similar. He asked him not to worry, because he wasn't ready to experience such pain again, and then Jin went to wash up. Muraken told Gilly that he would have to starve Jin out to get a grip on himself, but Gilly said that she would probably make the master dinner. Muraken was jokingly jealous of Jin. And now we see that the action takes place in a luxurious room framed in gold. In it, the siblings discussed that there was no way Jin could defeat a white wolf warrior, and they joked that Jin could only defeat a bandit wearing a wolf skin. They wondered how he managed to do this since he had only just reached the 3rd rank. One of the sisters said that it was possible, but only if Jin met the weakest white wolf. This is Gina's sister, Anna Runkendel, the 9th standard bearer of the Runkendels. But Mayu Rankendel, the 8th standard bearer of the Rankendels, said that even so, it was impossible, and that it made even less sense that Mom believed Jin right away. She asked Mew if she thought so, and then we see Hayton and Daytona. They discuss whether Jin really killed the wolf. Hayton said that no matter what kind of monster Jin is, it's impossible. The problem isn't whether or not he killed the white wolf, but whether or not he moves to the advanced group. Daytona agreed. He said that if Jin studied with them, they would be finished, and they both imagined an evil genie in their head who wanted to beat them up. They agreed that it was terrible. Then someone called them. It was Mew, and she asked them what they were whispering about, if they were afraid of what would happen when their little brother came to them. They said they weren't afraid, and Anna smilingly told them not to lie to their older sister. Then she made a threatening face and said that what she hated most was being lied to, so much so that she was ready to rip out their tongues. The twins, under pressure from their sisters, admitted that they were afraid of Jin. Then she offered to help. She allowed them to use them. She told them not to miss their chance and take slaves. The twins were happy. In the advanced group, everything follows the laws of the jungle. Both knights of the 3rd and 5th rank are engaged here. Newcomers are mixed with those who have been here for 10 years. Mew and Anna choose several cadets and turn them into their. She allowed me to take them and show Junior where he belongs, because they don't like him either. Then she grinned and told them to hold on if they didn't make it. Meanwhile, Jin took a dip and talked about how he had completed the first task, so it was finally decided to transfer him to the advanced group. In addition, his shadow energy had reached the 4th rank, and if he wants to use it properly, he should reach the 6th rank in swordsmanship in 5 years. Knights of the 6th rank are excellent swordsmen, 7th masters, and those who have reached the 8th rank and above are considered exceptions to the rule. For every 2 million people on the continent, there are barely 100 who have reached the 9th or 10th rank. And only one could go even further, the demigod, Star Knight and part-time father of Jin Shiren Rankhandle. Jin firmly believed and was determined that in this life, he would be able to become a Star Knight, and he wanted to surpass his father even more. Suddenly, we are transported to another place. We see someone knocking on the door. Rose was sitting in the room. She allowed us to enter. It was Jin, and he asked his mother if she had called him. Jin's mother, Rose, said that she did call for him. She told Jin that she had heard that he had successfully completed his mission and that she was very happy with his results. He thanked her for her words. Suddenly, Rosa started talking about Petro's report, and she said that she understood that Jin had refused her advice to move to another room. She asked Jin if he knew that only the child who becomes the next ruler can use these chambers. This room has been empty since Joshua the Jew used to live in it when he was younger, but it's time for Jin to take over the room. Jin thanked his mother, but said that he couldn't accept the offer. When asked why, he said that no matter how good the room is, it remains just 4 walls. Besides, it is too luxurious and big for him, according to him. When asked if Jin really didn't want to live there, he said that he really didn't want to and had already made up his mind. His mother just tapped her finger on the table and then let him go. When Jin left, she speculated about whether the younger one didn't have a drop of greed or whether there was too much of it. She was thinking about what she had offered quarters for those of the children who would become the head of the Rankhandle family in the future. Rose is sure that Jin knows about the support he will receive from the moment he enters this room, but he will become a target for those who did not get this opportunity. She assumed that Jin probably realized that she was testing him, that his mother would be looking forward to Jin's results in the intermediate class. And here we see Jin standing in front of the cadets, telling them that from tomorrow they will be transferred to the intermediate training class, which consists of several factions. They found a place in his faction. He warned them that they would get caught up in territorial battles and face aggression. But he told them not to be afraid, because he wasn't just going to watch if something happened. He said that it would all disappear once he completely left the intermediate class. Until then, he asked them to move in groups of 3, even if they weren't in training, and not to act alone. And now we see the following picture. Here is Zed Runkhandle, the eldest member of the Runkhandle family, a knight of the 8th rank, and the younger brother of Shiren Runkhandle. He's standing in front of the cadets. Zed has told them that a dozen recruits have dropped out this year and 27 have dropped out. He turned to the new students and told them to gain experience from their mentors in the intermediate class, and he would only teach them how to use the sword and evaluate their skills. Zed said they'd have to deal with everything on their own except for the murder. Then he turned to the mentors. He shouted and asked about what he always repeats. And all the mentors shouted that the Rankhandle didn't need weaklings. They screamed again, and again they screamed louder. Jin just thought about how loudly they were trying to scare them. As they stood there, Jin noticed the twins, too. They also stood there and shouted that the Rankhandle didn't need weaklings. Jin noticed that the ugly guy behind the twins seemed to have been training for quite some time, and there was no way the twins would defeat him alone. He realized that they must have enlisted the help of sisters Mew and Anna. Jin decided that even though they were trying to bully Jin and his faction, he had to let them know that they had misunderstood. Suddenly, he started walking towards his brothers and the guy standing next to him. The brothers were scared and didn't understand why he was going there, but they tried to reassure themselves that their sisters would support them. Suddenly, Jin unsheathed his sword and slashed at the guy standing next to the twins. The brothers were horrified. Zed was surprised to see it, too. Jin chopped off this guy's arm, and all the cadets froze in horror. The guy fell to his knees and screamed in pain, clutching his arm, or rather what was left of it. Jin thought that it shouldn't be him who was terrified, but them. Then he ordered a doctor to be called. Daytona took out his sword and started asking Jin why he did it and if he was. But Jin ignored him and turned to the cadet who had his arm cut off and asked him his name. The cadet introduced himself. His name is Kajin Romero. Jin then asked him if he knew why Jin had cut off his hand. At that moment, Daytona pointed his sword at Jin and asked why he was ignoring them and told him to draw his sword again. Jin frowned into his eyes and turned to his brothers, asking if they couldn't see that he was talking to Kajin, and also said that he would accept the duel later and told them to keep quiet. Hayton was infuriated, and he called Jin names and said how Jin dared to act like this after injuring his student. Suddenly, he closed his own mouth as if he had said something he didn't want to say. Jin understood what was going on, and when he heard that Kajin was part of the Hayton faction, he said that Kajin was looking at him too bloodthirstily, so he crippled him. The cadets were shocked when it turned out that a battle for political supremacy had begun between the brothers. Zed only enjoyed what he saw and was glad that the twins had been dealt a decent blow after trying to suppress their younger brother. Thanks to the twins, Kajin's position as part of their faction was stable. Because of this, Jin's actions weren't all that unpredictable, but the battle for hegemony is an established tradition in Rankandle. It was a very, very bold move from Jin. Jin then ordered all the new recruits to listen as he shouted out his name. He told them that they could point their swords at him or suddenly attack like he did. But he told them to keep in mind that if he saw even one hint of hostility, he would not hesitate to respond in kind, thus intimidating the cadets quite well. Suddenly Zed turned to Jin. Jin was ready to listen to him. Jin was calling him senior. Furious, Zed asked if Jin really thought he could do something like that in front of him. Jin answered without a moment's hesitation that he thought so. Jin said that he was confident that he would not fight the twins, but the older one. Zed was angry. He materialized an object in his hand, while also saying that Jin's words about fighting it were quite interesting. And now we see that Zed has a sword in his hand. He pointed his sword at Jin and ordered him to explain. According to Zed, depending on Jin's response, he can decapitate him. So Zed got angry and ordered Jin to explain. Jin replied that the senior had decided to use a unique technique to intimidate students, even though Jin was in the classroom. Jin was thinking about this when the older one attacked him. The elder swung his sword around. The sword passed very close with Jin, but Jin didn't even move and kept looking at the elder. There was a small cut on his face from the elder's punch, but he continued to stand still and only remained silent. Zed asked about how Jin didn't like Zed scaring the students, so he decided to make a fuss. Jin replied that, except for the fact that he didn't like it, it was exactly as Zed had said. Zed said that in such a case, Jin should have challenged him right away. Why would he hurt another cadet? Jin replied that it was because he couldn't beat him right now. Meanwhile, Bellup and Meza looked on in fear. Jin went on to say that if he thought he was going to win, he wouldn't have attacked Kajin or his brothers, but Zed. Zed said that Jin didn't seem to value his life too much or hope too much for the status of the patriarch's son, but Jin said that wasn't the case. The hero said that in his opinion, sitting idly by simply because his opponent is stronger than himself is not what a member of the Rankandle family would do. Zed looked at Jin seriously as he listened to this and then said that his death would only be a moment and his honor would be a legacy, and chuckled. The twins, like the other cadets, were surprised. How Zed said and grinned. Then he loudly said that Jin's bravado was so absurd that it made him, Jin's uncle, happy, and then he laughed out loud. The elder said that Jin should be allowed to do so, and that Jin was truly worthy of his surname. Then he turned to the cadets and told them to remember this day. Today, they saw what it was like to be in the Rankandle family. He said that this brat decided to show that they were crazy fanatics, then shouted at the cadets to fight and not forget who they were by clenching his fist. The senior officer released the cadets and informed them that their training would start tomorrow. The cadets were tense and scared. Jin, with his back to them, said that as their little brother, he was giving them advice. Right now, the twins are more afraid of their older siblings, but will it be the same in the future? He told me not to focus too much on what is happening now, and advised me to think better about the future. And now we're transported to Jin's room. He's back earlier. Then he turned to Jilly, who was bringing him tea, and said that he had declared the battle for hegemony to the twins. Jilly was surprised, and a drop of water slid down her face. But as Jin thought, the older sisters Mayu and Anna were probably covering for them. Jilly couldn't believe it, so she asked Jin again if he had actually declared a battle for the hegemony to both of them at once. Jin said that he had injured one of his brother's students, and after a bit of questioning, it turned out that this student of their sister's faction was his because his brother couldn't keep his mouth shut. Right now, the disciple belongs to the Gemini faction, and if the sisters find out about this, they will surely be furious. Jin said that there was no way his brothers would be able to recruit a 5th ranked knight to their faction, since they usually recruit those who are weaker than them to their factions. Nervously, Jilly said that both sisters had already reached the rank of standard bearers, and she explained that there was an unspoken rule that standard bearers could only fight with other standard bearers. Jin said it was true, and he was glad that his sisters were holding him back. It's a huge blow to them, as they're both standard bearers, and they can't leave Jin's side yet. The only thing they can do is disrupt the distribution of his room and increase the difficulty of missions thanks to their authority. Then there is a chance that Jin will be injured or killed. But do not forget about single-player missions among those that come with high difficulty. That's where no one will be watching Jin, which means he can use all his power. Jilly wasn't nervous at all, but on the contrary, she was even happy and said that then this would be a great opportunity. Jin only said that he should thank his sisters and strive for more. All of a sudden, he picked up Moth and said that he was sure no one would mind if Jin took the cat with him.